Welcome to the Pirate Broadcast, where we interview interesting people doing interesting things, where you can expand your connections, your community. Kindness is cool and smiles are free. And let's get this party started. And it's a beautiful day for a beautiful day, don't you think? Just asking, just checking in, Jan. Just checking in if you're awake today. Hey, we have on the Pirate Broadcast today, Daniel, and we're going to talk to Daniel today. He's been on lives. He's been sharing his stories. He's been linked in. We have a mutual friend, Gabe, who's always out there, doing some great work and highlighting people and having conversations. And even in Discord, I mean, the conversations are crazy over there. So I don't know if you're in Clubhouse or not, Daniel. Are you over there?
I am in Clubhouse. Yeah. Hey, don't get me started on Clubhouse, man.
I was on Clubhouse a while ago, and I looked up and it was midnight. And I'm going, what in the heck am I doing? And it's just one of those things. It's very engaging. It's very, addicting. And so I just wanted to talk today and highlight you, because not only are you an amazing adult and human and parent and husband and all the good things that we need in the world, but you're also a great friend and somebody that I really relate to. And you also are a programmer. So
I am.
And you've probably been programming for a little bit, here and there, a moment or two. So so share a few stories. So share a few stories about how you got into programming, because everybody's origin story is a little different.
So most of your listeners probably know I grew up in foster care and was traumatized before I came to the halls. Pretty abusive situation there. But one of the things my mom used to do is she used to go to a church function, and this is in Castleton, Vermont. She used to go to her church functions. She would drop me off at the college in Castleton, Vermont. And there you could go in and they would let people from the community come in and use their computers. So I was 8 years old. I went in and, just had no clue what I was doing, but I figured it out. And so that was at 8. By the time I was 10, my mom and dad got me a Commodore VIC-20. Nice. And I just, that was my escape. That was the way that I could cope with all my trauma, is just camp out inside my bedroom and had this great big huge TV and geeked out most of the day. And when it was time for a meal, I'd go down for a meal and go back up to my room and just keep on coding. And then from there, it was, by the time I was 13, I was helping college graduates with their COBOL and Pascal. I had just figured out everything, and I've had a great career since then. Doing coding for multi-million-dollar companies like Goodrich Corporation, Vermont Yankee, which is a nuclear power plant in Vermont, and Sprint, Nextel. So I've had a great career of just developing enterprise-grade software and picked up a few tech skills along the way. I know you used to build PCs. I used to build PCs and slap those hard drives together and PCs together and try to build them. But man, just trying to figure that out now, it's changed so much since.
It has changed so much. You mentioned Nextel, and I used to remember when Nextel was like the two-way talk radio.
Yeah.
And they used, when they first came out, they were actually built on the radio broadcast network that the truckers used. And it was a radio-based device, which was military-grade hardware.
Interesting.
And I issued these to outdoor advertising, the people working the billboards. And I had one of those Nextel units drop 80 feet, and it still worked.
Wow. Yeah. I don't dare try that with my iPhone.
No, I think your iPhone would explode.
Yeah.
but it's just amazing how parallel, we can talk about different companies and different corporations. I used to work in corporate and deliver services to, large corporations, FedEx, Toyota, and people like that. And it's really amazing to me to think that the variety and the exposure of different environments that we've had, Daniel. I mean, you think about how many different companies you've actually worked with or worked for or on behalf. And that broad experience kind of gives us a little different view on life. So are there any circumstances or any environments that really are unique that stand out to you that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, working in a nuclear power plant was quite interesting, especially if you had to go down to what they call the dry well area. It got pretty hot, so sometimes you'd have to suit up and go down there, and then when you got tested going into the power plant, you would have to go in and they would do the radiation test or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time I had a poppy seed muffin and I tested positive. I was like, it was the first time. And they're like, what did you have for breakfast? And I'm thinking to myself, why? I was like, I had a muffin. What kind of muffin? Poppy seed. And I guess that gives off some of the signals that, you have some type of radiation. Wow. So that was always interesting. Developing software in a 13-week cycle meant that if you miss something in that 13 weeks, you have to wait another 13 weeks to deploy it. You couldn't just patch it. And so that was quite interesting. And then probably one of my most interesting project was with Goodrich Corporation. Mm-hmm. We had to write back in the day of .NET and C# when they first started out in 2001. I was developing software with a Boeing, Airbus, the ATA, and Goodrich Corporation. We would calculate mean time between failure of all our Goodrich parts on the aircraft. So that meant that we had to gather data from Boeing, gather data from Airbus, get information from the ATA, and get all the pilot squawks of anything pertaining to that part. We have to mesh them together, and then we do calculations of the failure rates of our parts on their aircraft. So that was probably the most interesting software that I've built in my career. That was really cool. It was really cool to go to Boeing and see the 777 being made on the assembly line out in Everett, Washington, and just a fantastic experience. Yeah,
I did a lot of wireless work for Boeing. I was up there in the Everett plant. So
nice. So yeah. Did you see everybody riding their bikes around?
Yeah,
that's
a huge plant. That's a huge building.
It's like a mile something long.
Oh, it's crazy big. So I want to give a shout out to some of the people that are in the room today. Glenda is joining us. Good morning. How are you? And this guy, Gabe.
Hey. All right, man.
Dude. All right, you're here. Thank you so much for showing up.
Appreciate that, brother.
I just have to give a shout out, Gabe, because I love that you're just showing up. You're doing so much work out there and sharing so many talented people and gifted opportunities out there. And I just wanted to share that I admire your tenacity and your ability to go out there and create and work and continue to expand your horizons. So hats off to you, Gabe. And I really, really love the fact in the conversations that you're having. So I don't always catch it. I know the downside of being, busy and active and everything else, I don't get to catch as much as I want. So Daniel is such a brilliant man. Glenda, you have a fan, Daniel.
Thank you, Glenda. Appreciate that.
Glenda Thomas. Yes, he is Glenda. Yeah. Nick is here from Canada. Good morning. Hey, Nick, I hope you're having a good work relationship with your shift work and you're not staying awake all day and not getting enough rest. Jenny, hey Jenny, I got to give Jenny a shout out because she sent me a few things and I just want to Thank you. I got some things in the mail.
Nice.
I'll, follow up. Actually, I got quite a few things in the mail. Jenny, you're awesome. Love you. Thank you so much for being here. Nick Gimmel, good morning, Nick. Jenny Gold, Mike Baker is in the house. Mike, did you get the? Looks like you're in from Facebook. He was saying, and I don't know, Gabe, maybe you know this. People weren't getting their LinkedIn notifications anymore, so maybe they turned me off. I don't know. Zin, hey, hello everyone.
Good morning.
Daniel's story is so compelling, and I literally have cried hearing about his love and passion for love, life, and family. Absolutely, absolutely. But we're talking tech today with Daniel. So, I was on a project. One of my most, one of my funnest experiences with software was developing the software that. You go on the bus and you see the advertisements on the side. You go to the billboards, and you see the billboards up there. And then you go to the kiosks in the airport and all those advertisements in there. The software that tracks how long those ads have been up, who's the advertiser, who installed it, all of that stuff was a project that I worked on in the late 90s. It was called KB World. And it developed into... because I was in the outdoor advertising, radio, television, outdoor. And so we developed a software to be able to track, and because early in the, back in the day, they used index cards. And they would just have the billboard on there, the index card. And then if it was in a certain status, they would turn it one way. And if it was analog, it was completely analog.
Yeah.
And so when we digitize that, that's now the software that's all over the world. And a lot of it's probably the number one software that's used around the world for scheduling any kind of advertisement anywhere. So
that's awesome.
Little backstory.
No, I
wasn't a programmer. I was the person that gathered the feedback from the user community and said, okay, here's how it needs to work, the UI and everything else. So
nice.
One of those people, but did a lot of traveling, toured around the countryside, talking to people and gathered a lot of information around that. So,
and you're still talking to people, you're still traveling the world, but just virtually.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up, Daniel, is that through software, we just like this software, Dan and Gage built for StreamYard, there's so many opportunities have opened up in our world from software.
There has, yeah.
And so many programming languages. Now you started off with C# and COBOL, and what are you programming on these days now?
Oh goodness! Well, in the current day, it's a lot of Angular, HTML5, JavaScript, CSS3, that whole stack. Shifted from I'm still doing a lot of C#, a lot of .NET Core, what they call .NET Core, and that is Microsoft's way of, when you develop something, you develop it with one. You can write software like Hello World software in Windows, and then you can take that same code and you can deploy it across Windows, Mac, and Linux. So it's really cool, and I've really pushed the envelope with that and tested this across all platforms with building APIs, connecting to the blockchain. Yes, Bitcoin is real.
Yeah.
But
I wish I could find the password to my wallet.
Yeah. But yeah, so a lot of that now. And then just, any tech that comes along that I like to try to figure out how it runs, like Clubhouse. I've done a couple of, actually 3 posts on LinkedIn now regarding Clubhouse's API and the security of it. So I absolutely love it. When I'm not in the doghouse, I'm in the Clubhouse. So, it's okay. No, I'm hardly ever in the doghouse.
Yeah.
At least that's what I say. But
Yeah.
Are
you really in the doghouse?
Yeah. It means I have to do some self-reflection and try to figure out where I can improve on things.
Yeah.
So
we can always improve.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I just, I have been teaching this for years, Daniel, and sharing with people that we are living in the most amazing time in history, because when I started in technology, just like you, I actually, there was a time where I had to write a script for a modem to make the connections that I needed to connect. And it's really one of those things that people don't realize. If they were born with the iPad in their hand, they don't realize that I'm not saying that it's, the golden age or whatever it happens to be. However, we're looking at 100 years ago, 150 years ago, people were still riding horses, so this technology is accelerating, and we can just pick up a phone and we can broadcast, where 20, 30 years ago, you still had to have an engineer, a truck, a satellite dish, and everything that goes along with it, and massive amounts of time to program just a few bits of code to do minor things. And now we have stacks of, HTML5 has been some amazing progress in that. So,
yeah, I remember those days of modem scripts, and you had to set the baud rate. You had to have it do the connection, the disconnect. Yeah, I remember those days well.
Yeah. A lot of people. You mentioned Clubhouse APIs, and for those that aren't familiar with APIs, the interfaces between programs, Zapier and different programs that allow connections between programs to take place. That's a huge opportunity for so many people nowadays. To get information in and out of different programs. Can you talk a little bit and expand on that a little bit about how that works?
Sure. So if you take two different pieces of software, we won't even say what they are. They each have their own thing that they're doing, their own process that they're trying to, or whatever problem that they're trying to solve. And one of them speaks one language, another one will speak another language. And what that API does is a developer will come in and say, okay, if this software is saying this, they translate it to saying this over here, and then that allows them to communicate together. And so it gets a little bit more complicated than that. So if you take it a little bit further, say you have your inventory and a part number, and you have your part number over here and your part number over here. Well, they're not always, the data is not always the same. So they have to meet in that API, and there has to be some translation there for it to go over into the other systems, and vice versa, especially if you're synchronizing data back and forth. So at the very highest level, it's just making sure that data gets from point A in one system to point B in the other system, and that in the middle where that API is, they all have to be able to talk to each other in the same language. So that in a nutshell. And I spent the last 5 years researching how Tableau, these data analytics software packages like Tableau, Click, Sisense, and Looker have been able to connect to these hundreds of APIs. And I've actually been able to replicate that process and build my own back end where I can connect to all these hundreds of different APIs that are out there. And then I just have a nice front end that I built, and I'm able to do my own analytics. So
interesting. Yeah. A number of years ago, I was using APIs to. I built this platform. I don't know if it's a platform. It was basically a cobbled piece of a bunch of applications that were together to follow up leads. And the idea is you go to a conference, and everybody drops their business card in a pot to get a gift or a bag of whatever it is happens to be. Well, what happens is all of these companies, a lot of these companies may not ever follow up with those individuals that drop their cards in there.
Yeah.
So I built a platform called Follow Up Leads. And what it would do is it would take you take a picture of the business card. It would translate that into a CRM, customer relationship management. It would copy all that information, convert it into text and data. And then I created a small, this is long before Dub was even a program.
Yeah.
And I would do a little video, and then it would email out and said, hey, thanks for showing up here. And then it would put them in a drip campaign of saying, hey, I really appreciate you dropping by. Love to have you. If you want some more information, please click here. And then if they click there, they would go another campaign. And if they didn't, then I'd drop them off because, obviously they didn't want to receive the email. And it was really through a couple of APIs talking to different programs that I was able to put this all together. So at the end of the day, it was just a icon on your phone. You open it up, take a picture, and then the next thing you know, it was in your app. And there was a program called bubble.io. It was codeless application. It was like, that's about as far as I can go. So all of these things, but these ideas, and the reason I bring it up is I want to make sure that everybody understands that programming allows the creativity. If you can imagine something, you could probably program something to have an impact on that idea and that adventure in your mind's eye.
Yeah.
So.
I know in my LinkedIn profile, I say that I'm a software visionary. And I don't really self-proclaim that. I just have been in situations where I would think of something and be about 4 or 5 years later, it would be on the market. And I'm like, that you have to have the resources and everything in place to be able to solidify that. A good example of that was working with Nova Corporation. And I was tasked with trying to find a way to track our documents in our SharePoint system back then. And this was 2012. And I got to thinking, I can see the software lifecycle from cradle to grave and everything else in between. And why don't we put a QR code in a Word document or a PDF file and track the document through? And they were like, oh, no, nobody's ever done that. We're not going to do that. It's too risky. And now you have DocuSign and everything, everybody doing that with QR codes now. I was just like, man. So I tend to think of a lot of things outside of the box and not get too trapped into current tech. I love building new tech and if the resources are there, I like to push the envelope.
I love that. I really enjoy these kind of conversations. I want to come back to some of the conversations. Patrick is in the room. Good morning, he says. Tracy is a wonderful producer that helps me produce these shows. She's awesome.
Morning, Tracy.
Sherry Lawley. Love you, Sherry. How are you doing? I hope you're well.
Morning, Sherry.
Mike Baker says, always good to be here. Gabriel says, loving the conversation. Russ Hedge from Oregon. Good morning, Pirates. Amber. Good morning, Amber. How are you doing? Russ says, amazing story. Gabriel says, you should see the tech conversations in our Discord channel that Daniel.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, we talk about, I know this is probably a family show, but we talk about deep penetration and hacking, and that's all I'll say. We were talking about Clubhouse and the just exposing some of the API stuff, and sometimes their minds go off on a few different tangents, and I'll leave it at that.
Nick Gibble says you guys are talking Chinese to me. Oh, I just started. I started in 2007 as a web developer. It's just like, hey, I'm going to learn this WordPress thing.
Yeah.
And WordPress has really changed. There's a Breezy has now taken WordPress to actually do a cloud-based WordPress program. So you can take the code and transfer it to different sites. So you update it one place on your code, on your cloud, and then it updates the website. So you don't have to necessarily log into everyone. It's a pretty interesting model. I'm kind of fascinated to see how it goes.
Nice.
Much love to these two remarkable pirates. There's more compassion in this stage today than can be found in some huge corporations.
Morning, Wendy.
Wendy, love you. Thank you so much, Wendy. And Nancy says, hi, Gabriel.
Morning, Nancy.
Morning, Nancy. How are you doing? It's early for Nancy. She's on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So Mike Baker says, I've been thinking of using ClickFunnels, yet it takes away from my personal touch and building a relationship. Let's talk about that, because a lot of programming is automation. It's like, okay, let's take a lot of data and shift it, pivot tables in Excel and all of these things that you can do with data. And really, at its core, code is poetry, right?
Yep.
And if you can optimize some of these processes, I mean, can you give us some examples of automation like that? You mentioned
absolutely,
multiple APIs like the data platforms that are out there.
Yeah. I'll give you a great example of automation. So a lot of people don't understand or don't realize that Microsoft actually changed and shifted in 2007. They shifted their footprint for Microsoft Office. All those files were all binary files. Now, 2007 and beyond, the documents became text-based files. Now, when you look at the documents, they don't look like they're text-based. But if you take a look like a docx file or an XLSX, which is Excel, they're actually zip files. You can rename them to .zip, and you can uncompress them. And what you'll get under the hood is all XML text-based files. So and that's how they're able to import and take those files into like a search engine. And the search engine will suck those in. It'll decompress them because they're just zip files. Yeah. Decompress them and strip out the text. And that's how they're able to automate and aggregate all this text-based information from your document file, from your Office files. Now you take that one step further, they're text files. So if you wanted to automate generating a Word file or an Excel file, they're text files. So if you know the algorithms to be able to render that text and then compress them all together into that zip file, you can create a docx file or an XLSX or Excel file and automate that whole process. Of course, there's tools out there now, tooling vendors that'll do that automatically for you. But I think that's just a neat example of how automation has come forward, at least in the last 10 plus years.
That's a major transfer, because coming back from Microsoft, especially because it's such a huge behemoth. I started in networking around DOS 6.2 or 6.1. 6.1. I remember when 6.1.1 came out, and there was an add-in that you could actually use it to network. And that was a major accomplishment. That's when we converted over from a mainframe IBM System 36 to a client server technology, and
Fantastic and Novell. Yeah. And there was another one. I forget what it was. Started with a P. I don't know.
history lesson.
Yeah. Lantastic was the big one in Novell.
Yeah. And it was really an amazing time. I mean, and that's what kind of brought the nerd out into me, because I had, previously been a musician, and I fell and broke my arm and went through 2 years of rehab, and came back as a safety director, which got me into computers and typing, safety documents and all of this computer technology to develop safety programs and teach and train and, all of this stuff. And then I thought, well, hey, I can learn the computers. So then I got into computers, and the rest they say is history.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so funny to look back and talk to somebody that's, kind of lived and understands some of that technology and the way it's evolved over time. So
I think one of the funniest stories I have of this kind of tech is actually when I was working at the nuclear power plant. There had somebody kept hearing this god awful beeping coming from their PC, and there were two technicians from the help desk that had already been there. They stripped apart the computer, and it was still beeping. I don't know if they unplugged it or not, but I ended up going up there and like, this is so odd. Two guys couldn't figure this out. So I couldn't figure it out. And I unplugged it, and the dang thing was still beeping. I'm like, okay, this is not happening. They had left, there was a, inside their drawer right above the computer was a pager.
And the battery.
The battery was going on it. It was like, and it was like every minute or something. And two technicians couldn't figure it out, and I was just like, "You guys didn't unplug it?" Well, no,
it was in the machine, right?
So,
oh man, yeah. Daniel, we could spend hours having conversations about adventures in tech, and we haven't even touched into AI, which is an entirely new platform and a new, Google just released their, their East 360 or something along those lines. I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's a new level of amazing tech that powers it's starting to power a lot of websites with our, AI. So.
Yeah, Descript is probably the most disturbing AI for me. Yeah, you can replicate your voice pretty well, and not only that, just by typing, you can type out an entire paragraph, and it'll read it back in your voice, and it doesn't sound. It takes a while. It takes you about half, 3/4 of an hour to train your voice with your training system, but then it's just like, oh my gosh, you can do a whole book with your voice if you want to do inflections, intonation, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. It is wild.
That is crazy. And I think the next 10 years are going to be very telling in terms of what people do, how they respond, how they react to what's going on around them in the world. So we'll have you back on another pirate broadcast, and we'll talk about that subject later. So,
all right.
Daniel, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. There's so many people in the room. ClickFunnels are call to action buttons, artificial intelligence. Wendy says, I appreciate the amount of time, effort it takes to master the intel necessary to run my business. My nerds.
Thank you, Wendy.
And Nancy was saying, Sherry Lolly, I was thinking about the same thing. I need subtitles. I learned a lot. Gabriel says, I learned a lot from Daniel Hall. Daniel is awesome. So there's just a lot of comments here, and I really appreciate everyone in the room. And I would love the fact that if you could take a moment and just share this post out and, share it with the world. Somebody might want to resonate with this. Somebody may want to learn a little bit more about what's going on in the communities around us. There's so many amazing people in the pirate community, Gabe's community. Go follow Gabe, go like and comment on his stuff. And, all of the people that are in the room today have an amazing opportunity to make these connections, start the conversations, have a little kindness, because Daniel, kindness is cool and smiles are free. So enjoy the day, my brother. So thank you so much. You got any big plans this week? Rest of the week? Gonna go off and spend time with the kids?
Absolutely. That's probably the biggest plan.
All right, everyone.
All right.
Take care. Enjoy the day, and see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining the Pirate Broadcast. If you found this content valuable, please like, comment, and share it across your social media channels. I would love the opportunity to help others grow in their business. The Pirate Syndicate is a platform where you show up, we produce the show. It's that easy. If you want to be seen, be heard, and be talked about, join the Pirate Syndicate today.